Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
That's what I'm talking about. All of our guests today, including Ross Tucker, standing. But does it get better than this? It's sunny outside for the first time in a long time, and Ross Tucker is back. All of our guests brought to you by Delaney's OK Tire in Langley. In business for over 20-plus years, OK Tire is Canadian-owned and operated from coast to coast. Visit them at 19863 Fraser Highway in Langley. Joined now from the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, CBS Sports, and Westwood One by Ross Tucker for the first time since Super Bowl. Ross, thanks for doing this. How are you, sir? Good to have you back.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good to see you guys. Good to talk with you. Good to hear Donnie say that's what I'm talking about. And I'll say this about Delaney's OK Tire. Mm-hmm. I don't know about the name of that company because the tires are not okay. The tires are amazing. That's the only place I've ever gone to get my tires is Delaney's OK Tire in Langley, British Columbia, because they're that good.
If you knew how good they were, Ross, honestly, you'd make the drive from Pennsylvania. Hey, so here's the obvious question, Ross. First time we've had you since the Super Bowl. You know what I'm going to ask? How was the skiing?
Unbelievable, man. I had an epic skiing season. I'm still coming up there. I am coming up there. I don't know if either one of you guys ski, but at some point, I'm coming up there. I'm skiing at Whistler. I'm hanging out at the dog bar where they have your merch. We're hanging out. Like we are hanging out. It's going to be epic. No, I got out to Big Sky in Montana a couple times. I got out to Vail with my high school buddies. So even though there was like no snow on the East Coast, skiing season was good. Now we're in draft season, and as soon as draft season's over, we will transition to beach season for May, June, July, and August, and then it'll be football season again, and we'll be talking every week.
What a life, what a life. Okay, you mentioned the draft. 5'10", Bryce Young, he goes to Carolina, number one. How's he going to do at the NFL level?
I think he's going to do really well. Yeah, I mean, I thought he was a no-brainer number one overall pick, which, by the way, makes the Texans winning that last game last year against the Colts even worse. You know, there's a big drop-off in my mind between Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. So first of all, you know, you guys, I know the high school football is different up there. Yep. Do you have any idea how good you have to be to be 5'10", 170 pounds and get a full scholarship to Alabama as a quarterback? I mean, unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Then he goes to Alabama. He wins the Heisman his first year as a starter. And I actually thought he was more impressive this past year, guys. They didn't have many good players. Look at Alabama. No other receivers drafted, no tight ends drafted, no good offensive linemen. This was not like a loaded team. Whereas opposed to C.J. Stroud, I mean, you look and he had four first-round wide receivers, Olave, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr. will be a top 5 pick next year, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and he got 2 stud tackles. I mean, you just didn't see C.J. Stroud. I think one of the reasons why some of these Ohio State quarterbacks struggle is it's like so easy in college because their line's so good, their receivers are so good. NFL's not like that. I thought Bryce Young had to actually overcome a lot of adversity this past year, and even when Alabama lost, it wasn't his fault. They scored a ton of points. I don't think I've ever seen the guy have a bad game. I thought it was a slam dunk for the Panthers.
Okay, you mentioned C.J. Stroud there, Ross. He goes to Houston at number 2. He scored poorly on his S2 test. Do you care?
Not yet. However, I only heard about the S2 test this year.
Same here.
And it sounds like, and I need to do a little more research on it, it sounds like there's pretty good data that a lot of the really good players, I guess they've been doing it for a while because Josh Allen took it and scored high on it. So it seems like a bunch of the good quarterbacks have scored high on it, and some of the guys that didn't score high have struggled. I do think it's a little bit interesting because when you watch C.J. Stroud, it looks like he processes things really well. Like it looks like he sees a blitz, knows where to go with the ball. It looks like he knows what he's doing. So I'm not sure what part of the test he failed. And the thing I struggle with a little bit on those things, guys, is how well did their representation prepare them for it? Maybe Bryce Young or Levis's agent said, hey, this is a big deal to these teams now. You really got to work on this. And maybe CJ Stroud's agent didn't. Will Levis scored great on it, and he still hasn't been drafted yet. So it's obviously not that big a deal.
Ross, the Seahawks, everybody knows they need a defensive lineman. There were two good ones on the board still. At number 5, they take a cornerback, Devonte Witherspoon. Were you surprised?
Yeah, very. It's funny. I kind of respect the Seahawks in the sense, guys, they just love ballers. Like guys that just love football. I would love to see the traits that the Seahawks look for in a player, because pretty clearly competitive toughness, aggression is very high on the list, because that's what you get with Witherspoon. He is an off-the-charts competitor, which is great. He's still a kind of undersized corner who they took 5th overall with a couple of stud D linemen on the boards. Now, the stud D lineman, Tyree Wilson, had a foot injury that people had some concerns about. Jalen Carter from Georgia had off-the-field stuff that people were concerned about. So I think it's okay if you're Seattle to say, you know what, it's the 5th pick in the draft. It's like close to $30 million fully guaranteed. We're not taking a guy with a red flag. Let's just take a guy that doesn't have any red flags, and let's get a really good player, and that's what they think they got in Witherspoon.
I'm going to be honest with you, Ross. It was tough to see Kentucky quarterback Will Levis sit there. Pick after pick after pick. He was supposed to go in the top 5, top 10. Why does a player like that drop so far?
Well, number one is because there's a lot of misinformation before the draft. And, I'm always a little bit leery of the guys that you hear, oh, he's going to go number 2 to Houston, he's going to go number 4 to the Colts. Because when that stuff starts to come out, it makes you wonder a little bit, are there people that want people to think that? Are there people that want that guy to get drafted? Because they don't want him. Right. They want somebody else to take him. They want to push a player down to them. And I put this on Twitter last week, at Ross Tucker NFL, and I don't know if you guys saw it or not. If you didn't, and really this goes for all of the listeners or the viewers, you need to follow me on social media, at Ross Tucker NFL. Whether you know it or not, there's a huge void in your life if you're not. I mean, I post food, I post beer, I post funny comments. So, but anyway, I compared, do you guys have Target, Walmart, and at one point, did you guys have Kmart up there?
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, well, we I think they all came and left. Actually, Target came in and left. Walmart is still here. Why do you ask?
Okay, so I say that because I compared Will Levis, Rick, to Kmart.
Yeah.
My dad was in sales for a chocolate Easter bunny company for 30 years.
Wow. Nice.
And Kmart was huge where I grew up. And they all went out of business. And I asked him why. And he said, because they're in the middle. So what do you mean? He's like, well, if you want the least expensive thing, you go to Walmart because they're going to have the best price. If you want something maybe a little bit nicer, all you need is something for the house or whatever. But you want something like a little bit unique, you go to Target, or as we like to say, Target, right? If Kmart was in the middle, why would you go to Kmart?
Yeah.
If you want, there's no reason to go to Kmart. If you want the best thing, you go to Target. If you want the cheapest, you go to Walmart. That's Levis. If you wanted like a polished pocket passer who could process and was real, that was CJ Stroud. If you wanted like the big arm, strong, fast guy with the upside, that was Anthony Richardson. Like there was no argument to take Levis over those guys, depending on what it is you were looking for.
Moving on from the draft, Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, 5 years, $260 million. Okay, who would you rather have? And I know you were happy with the team that you cover more than the other, the Philadelphia Eagles, and what they did at the draft. Who would you rather have? Lamar Jackson, 5 years, $260. Jalen Hurts, 5 years, $255.
Yeah, I would rather have Jalen Hurts. And it's wild to say that, because Donnie, like the idea of you even asking that question before this past season would be comical, right? I mean, it'd be like, yeah, give me a break. I'll tell you why. Jalen Hurts is going like this. I mean, Jalen Hurts, that was only his third year. It was only his second year as a starter, and he was fantastic. He is built a little more sturdily than Lamar Jackson, so he's been more durable. Lamar's only started and finished one game in December and January over the last couple years. I think Hurts is a better pocket passer than Lamar Jackson. So I would go with Hurts. Hurts is younger. So there's several reasons why I go with Hurts. Now let's see how this year goes. Maybe it was a 1-year thing for Hurts, and maybe in a new offense, Lamar will take off. But that's the other thing too. We haven't seen Lamar in a different offense than Greg Roman. Maybe it's awesome and he's fantastic, but maybe it's the other way. Maybe he was better with Greg Roman and didn't really realize it.
Okay, I want to throw this in as well. The Eagles, a lot of news surrounding Jalen's. We mentioned Jalen Hurts. They take Jalen Carter at number 9, one of their 2 first-round draft picks that I know you were happy with. But tell us about Jalen Carter. And the reason I asked that is because for Seahawks fans, there was a lot of thought that he was going to be taken at number 5 by Seattle.
Well, he's a fantastic football player. I did not hear one person that would dispute that, right? I mean, he's an awesome, awesome player. Now, there might be some people that felt like he didn't try hard at times or try hard enough. I think the Eagles feel especially good about him because he can have a mentor in Fletcher Cox, who's actually who he reminds me of, 12th year veteran D tackle for the Eagles. But then also the Eagles drafted 2 of his teammates last year, Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean. So those guys are high character guys. And I think the Eagles feel like, hey, we get Jalen with those guys and he'll be able to follow their lead and do the right things. Yeah. Now, for a team like Seattle, you had the off the field incident, you had the terrible pro day. Yeah. Evidently, the Georgia coaches didn't give him a huge recommendation. That's a lot of money. That's a big risk. The Eagles are in a position where I think they feel like they can take that risk.
Ross, I want to ask you about the message to all the players that didn't get drafted or won't get drafted today either. You didn't go in the draft, but you signed immediately after 7 years. There's going to be a ton of players' disappointment, but that doesn't mean the journey ends.
No, not at all, Rick. I'm glad you brought that up. It's amazing. I mean, that was 22 years ago, 2001. And even you just saying that, Rick, immediately my eyes started to fill up a little bit. It's like Pavlov's dog when I think about that whole weekend and everything. Here's what I would tell those guys that don't get drafted. You still have a shot at your dream. You still have an opportunity, and all that matters is what you do with it now. You need to be by far the most aggressive guy on that field. If the coaches tell you to calm down, that's a good thing. You got plenty of friends. You don't need to make friends with any of these guys. And, after the first round, I think the most guys in the NFL, and part of it's a volume thing, are undrafted. There's a ton of undrafted guys that are in the NFL that start. You can still do this, but you have to make sure you don't spend a second being upset that you didn't get drafted. Put all of that focus and energy into what you have to do next.
Mother's Day coming up. Ross, any ideas?
Yeah, of course I do. The best Mother's Day gift of all time, whether it's for your mom or the mother of your child. People never know what to get their wife for Mother's Day. You know what I mean? Like they don't know. Go to myfrontpagestory.com. I've told you guys about it before. By far the best Mother's Day gift ever. They write an incredible story about your wife. You can talk to, or your mom, while you're driving home from Tim Hortons or whatever. You talk to them for 10 minutes. They write this story. It looks like it's on the cover. Actually, when you're driving back from OK Tire in Langley, after you got a new set of white walls or whatever they call tires, you call myfrontpagestory.com. I'm just telling you, I would be shocked if your mom does not cry when she thinks about how thoughtful it is that you had a story commissioned written all about her and how amazing she is. And I can pretty much guarantee she'll cry when she reads the quotes about how special she is and how much of a positive influence she's been in your life. And then it'll be hanging up in your house or her house forever. MyFrontPageStory.com. Do it, fellas.
My mom would start crying if I was driving a car with white walls. This is 1958. Ross,
you know what's so funny? What's so funny? I don't even know the name of any other tire. That must have been in some movie. Is that like My Cousin Vinny? Like white walls
let's
are
go with
in
that.
my head somehow for tires. Like that was the only tire reference I had. But I'll tell you this much, Donnie. If there are white walls still, there's no better place to get them than Delaney's OK Tire in Langley.
Bingo. Listen to this guy. Perfect. We'll talk to you after beach season, Ross, okay?
Sounds great. See you guys.